This is Joker 2, also known as Joker Folie À Deux. Seriously, we're diving into this sequel to the really popular, mostly well received original Joker film that came out a number of years ago. And we've gotten a sequel here, which has our titular character, Arthur Fleck, back as the Joker, joined by Harley Quinn, Lady Gaga, and they are enjoying what is called a jukebox musical. Be sure to like the video, subscribing is great as well, and again, comments are always welcomed for these movie reviews so that I know if I should try to do more of them. So let's dive in and talk about this sequel that is, in many ways, a colossal step down from the original film that came out a number of years ago. So I really liked Joker. I thought it was a great look at mental health. It was a great character study. Yes, to some degree, you could say it's derivative off of some of the more iconic films out there. I've definitely seen that complaint and note over the years. But I thought it was a really good, deep look at a character and the Joker, and creating a new sense for more of a realistic approach to what could cause this type of character to exist. And then we have a sequel here, which kind of leans upon that, but wildly goes off in a different direction that feels almost insulting, and or you could clearly tell that no one that was kind of a part of this movie really cared that this movie existed, which to a degree is insulting in the sense that like I paid money to go and watch this movie, and they obviously didn't care. You can clearly tell the director and Joaquin Phoenix there is Joker, and Lady Gaga just kind of were taking a paycheck on this one because it's rough is what it is. So I quite like musicals. I don't fall into the crowd of people that detest musical movies, but this is very much a musical. Although I wouldn't really call it much of a musical because it's really poorly put together. So, jukebox musical, which is what this is essentially they're singing popular songs, known songs. There's nothing original, there's nothing distinct here. And in the film, it's just really quite illogical. Like, the idea of a Joker musical, to me, isn't bad if it's done right. The concept could be really, really intriguing. And, like, you could see kind of the foundations of some interesting things here, but just nothing really happens. So the movie is largely a court procedural. The first half hour of things are kind of setting up the state of everything. Uh, Arthur, Joker, has kind of given up. The beat in his step is gone. He's not laughing, he's not telling jokes. And then he comes across this woman, and all of a sudden his world is reignited, and there's a big court case happening, and they have to see, is he a dual person? Is he Joker, or is he Arthur, or is he a mix of the two? That's for the courts and the jury to decide. So after the first half hour, it just gets really boring. It's like 40 minutes in or so. I was kind of like, it was getting pretty boring. Like the movie was not engaging or interesting, and it just quite a few times throughout, I was like, wow, there's just nothing's happening, and it just keeps getting worse. Like honestly, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. So essentially, you just go from like sequence to sequence. So it'll be like or procedural or story moment, and then random singing, and it's like the singing is disjointed from what is happening. Usually in musicals, you use songs or moments or singing to push forward the narrative or to expand the scope of what's happening, a feeling, emotion, or something like that. And the singing here, it's basically plot, stop for singing, then plot continues, and then stop for singing. And it was just really weird because, like, at times you're like, oh, this might be neat. And you keep thinking that there's, like, the foundations of something interesting going on. And just, like, nothing really happens. It's just bizarre. I've seen numerous people though kind of mention that like Lady Gaga is like barely in it as Harley Quinn. She's in like the whole movie, but she just doesn't do anything. I wouldn't even say necessarily like it's a bad performance or anything, but it's just pointless. Like she's just there. The building blocks of something interesting with her character are there in regards to how she is using the situation, but then eventually just nothing happens with her character. She's just there. The whole movie is the best way I can describe it. she doesn't really have much of an impact. Like initially, it looks like she's gonna serve a big role here, be an important thing, and to a degree, I guess you could say that she was a big role in this movie because it's basically just the two characters. But like, she was just along for the ride, but didn't really do anything too wild, and a bit of a letdown for sure because I thought there was a lot of potential with this take on the character. And singing I guess was fine, but like it was she was just pointless. It actually served no function to the narrative or anything, and it just kind of like was like, oh, okay, she's there, and then stuff happens. And Joker, again, pretty good performance, but like just not a whole lot for the character to kind of do. Like this whole movie, and I'm trying to do this review without spoiling things to any degree. That's kind of usually how I do my reviews. But like it's just a court procedural that is essentially going over the events of the first movie. There's even literal flashbacks that show what happened in the first movie, and you're kind of just watching them talk about the first movie and like re-examining that. And that's where I do think again another element of it being a little insulting is like it seems like the creators, the director, and I know Joaquin Phoenix had a bit of hand in there too. It seems like they just kind of hate the people that liked the first movie, which I don't think is the best of approaches or the smartest of approaches. It's really odd because it genuinely seems that they were like, haha, this first film was not something they liked or something, and it's just odd because the whole thing, even as you get towards the conclusion element of it, it's just you're kind of left going, huh. And like there's a few points in the movie where I was just sitting there, I'm like, this is a really genuinely bad film. Like it tells a story of sorts, but it doesn't really add anything to what we haven't seen in the first film. There's nothing new, there's nothing different, there's nothing building upon things. It's just sort of a slight reframing of what already happened. So you're kind of rewatching a lesser and or more worse version of that original film, and it's just kind of like sad. It's sad. You keep waiting for something interesting to happen, something wild to happen, something surprising to happen, and just nothing ever does. It just kind of you get to a certain point, and you're like, wow, nothing. It's just nothing's gonna go on in this film. It's just eventually just going to end, and that's what happened. And I was sitting there being like, wow, what a absolutely pointless waste of time it was. A genuinely terrible waste of time. I definitely would not recommend this movie. It's very poorly put together and just sort of light on doing anything. It just felt like a going through the motions kind of movie where there just was no depth or detail to it. You go in and it's just random court bits of rehashing the first film, random singing, and then you think there's a build up, and then it's just like, haha, the joke's on you, is kind of what it felt like. Visually, though, I think the film was actually quite beautifully shot. It looks very much on par with the original movie, I felt. Like, it looked very stylized, it looked very glamorous, and, as much of like a haha land, kind of like a Joker-esque musical would be. It was very visually impressive. Budget-wise, which I guess doesn't factor into the reviews, I don't really see how this film cost as much as it supposedly did, for sure, which is just something that was on my mind too. I'm like, yeah, sure, the sets and everything like that look nice, and it's shot well, but like, you don't really go anywhere, you don't really see much, and it's all very, very brief. I guess it all went to the actors' payments for having to do the sequel. And I don't think the sequel was unnecessary. I don't think, this was very much like a movie that was going to get a sequel no matter what. Like, it did well enough that it was getting a sequel. And I think there was a lot of room to build with the character, not necessarily having to, like, shove Batman or other characters into it. You could have still kept it as a self-contained thing, but there's very logical steps to where you could have taken things. And they just refused to do anything that made it interesting, intriguing, or exciting or action-packed. In the first film, it wasn't like a crazy action thrill ride, but it had build-up and it had payoff. And it left you with like, wow, that was an intense movie. That was, things to say and things to do. And this movie, they were just like, well, we have to make this, I guess. So it's a musical Joker movie. But like, you have Lady Gaga, and you don't do any original songs, and you've got all these characters. Like it's like again the building blocks. Very very talented leads, great supporting cast of characters, and it's just like it's wasted potential to the highest degree. Like there could have been so many paths. Like I kept thinking of so many different ways that they could take it in more exciting and interesting ways as the film was going on. I was like, oh, if they go this way, if they go that way. And then it just kind of left you kind of being like, again, really felt quite insulted by how it all wrapped up. I was just like, oh, okay, wow. I see how it is. Gonna really think about that when I, go to view other projects from these performers and stuff. The director and the core actors. I'm gonna kind of be like, okay, because it really did feel like they were just kind of taking a paycheck on this one. It didn't really weren't fully into it. It was just such a bizarre, pointless waste of time. I genuinely hated this film. I thought it was awful. It was not enjoyable. It was a big disappointment. As I said, I really like the original. I love musicals. There's quite a few that I really do genuinely enjoy. And I know that's not the sentiment everybody has, but like the movie here was just a mess, an absolute mess, and an absolute waste of my time. And if you go watch it, probably your time. And it's like some you might kind of enjoy it, but as far as like a theatrical viewing goes, that it was rough. It was rough. So yeah, performances wise, I guess okay. Lady Gaga just was there, but again, her hardly didn't do anything. She was just there to kind of sing occasionally and be present. And then court procedural singing, and then things wrap up, and you're like, oh, okay. And it seems like they don't really necessarily want to do any more, and I don't think they'll be able to do any more after how much of a mess this was. I give it a 3.6 out of 10. And if I have a written review, maybe you'll find that in the video description below. And again, liking the videos is great, subscribing is great, and just letting me know you guys like the movie reviews is excellent so that I know if I should spend time doing more of them. And hopefully we'll have more covered in the future. Joker 2, what a disappointment.